How's it? I'm Rick Barboza. I'm co-owner of Hui Ku Maoli Ola, Native Hawaiian plant nursery and landscaping company. Me and my business partner, Ku Sherman, formed Hui Ku Maoli Ola back in 1999. And this is our 21st year in business. Our revenue streams are plant nursery, wholesale and retail, as well as habitat restorations, via grants or government contracts, and landscaping, commercial and residential. So and also plant rentals, but that's not a huge moneymaker. But we've been, happy to serve our community this long, and hope to do it, a lot longer. We both got into native plants from our college backgrounds, which is my degree is in zoology, but my focus is conservation biology and ecology, and Ku's degree is in Hawaiian studies, and together it formed a good partnership for different backgrounds for a perfect business as far as what we went to school for. And so luckily, when we first started out, there was just the two of us, and we currently have about 44 employees, 45 at the office. The majority of them are landscapers right now, and but then we also have our nursery crew here today. And what we're going to be talking about is what we do practically every day, which is propagating native plants. The reason why we started growing native plants in the first place was, we're learning about our native ecosystems and learning about Hawaiian plants from a cultural perspective. And growing up in Waimanalo, kind of surrounded by plant nurseries, like the plant nursery capital of the state. And the more that we started to learn, the more that we were realizing that plants that we surrounded ourselves with, like plumerias and puakenikenis and pakalanas and lawa'e ferns, everything that we thought were Hawaiian, turns out they're not Hawaiian. And when you start realizing what plants are Hawaiian, then you start going out and trying to see them and realize that, man, these plants are hard to find. And so one of the things that we thought that would be good to help reinvigorate the culture and also help out ecosystems is to learn how to propagate these plants. And one of the big things on my end was I took an ornithology class at UH, went up to Hakalau, misnetted birds, took samples, caught an eel. Just kind of life-changing experiences. And from there, I kind of wanted to grow birds, but I knew that was going to be hard to do. So I figured, the next best thing would be to grow what the birds need, which is their food and habitat. So that's kind of what was driving me to want to grow native plants. And then, the hard part was, okay, well, what is native and what's not native? And that was, kind of depressing to learn about, because, like I said, you realize everything that you grew up with that you thought was Hawaiian isn't Hawaiian, but at the same time also provided a lot of fuel for the fire to want to learn more. And then when it became time to start propagating plants, I got a shout out to Heidi Bornhorst and her Growing Native Plants book, because it was simple enough for somebody that's not a botany major to understand, informative, and it kind of had a little short-term end goal of trying to propagate everything in that book and practicing all of those methods. And then from there we just kind of took that, it took a couple of months for us to actually attain almost everything in that book, but that's all we needed. And then from there we just kind of kept running with that ball, and we're still learning. Even to this day, even though it's our 20th year in business, there's plants that we've tried in the past that have failed at propagating, but we've tried them again, and we're more successful now at growing certain species today than we were in the past. For example, one of them is EAEA. We could never propagate EAEA before, but then we just kept on trying it, taking a break from it. We don't want to try too many times or fail too many times, kind of feel bad, trying to propagate stuff and killing them. But take a little break, revise our methods, and then come back to it. And then now we got the most EAEA that we've ever had before in our nursery. 2. I guess key reasons why we do cuttings for a lot of our species, even though they could be considered genetically weak compared to growing plants from seeds because they're all clones. We do that to preserve the integrity of that particular plant that we're growing. So for example, we grow a whole bunch of different types of hibiscus, and we don't really ever propagate hibiscus in the nursery from cuttings because they hybridize real easy. So we try to keep those clones and those cultivars intact, so that they're not just a homogenized mess in the long run. Sometimes if we're in the wild and we have the permit to collect, then we'll collect some seeds from wild populations, but in the nursery we just stick to cuttings. We'll do some cuttings of this Kokio Ula Ula. This is a hibiscus Kokio, subspecies Kokio, and you can see these guys are really tall in their pots, and they're okay to outplant like this, but we want to make more. So what I usually do is I like the top third, the less woody plant material for making cuttings. So you can kind of see down here is much more woody than up here, so I'll just grab from over here, and then when I cut it, I try to make sure that there's enough room to at least have that bottom node in here to use this as a cutting material. I don't want to leave too much space. So you can see I'm kind of transitioning from the real soft wood to the much more woodier wood. So it's kind of right in the middle. And then, yeah, it's good for now. So the standard type of media that we use when we're doing cuttings, primary thing is that it has good drainage. A lot of people will mix perlite with vermiculite, which is great, but vermiculite can be really expensive. And for a lot of the plants that we grow, I mean, we've done it long enough that we kind of know which ones need more, tender loving care versus others that don't. So in the majority of the plants that we grow from cuttings, we have this relatively standard mix, which is 1 part coconut coir to 2 parts perlite. So that's right there is already 2 scoops of coconut, so I'll just do 4 scoops of perlite. And then kind of mix it in. And the important part is to use new media and clean media. You don't want anything that has any type of fungal possibilities. So you get about like that, and then we'll either put them into a plug tray, which I'll get, or I'll do them into a community pot, like a 6-inch pot, depending on how much plants we're doing, how much cuttings we got, or what species it is. So now we're gonna make our rooting hormone solution. We typically use dip and grow, and depending on the species or the the type of wood that you're using to make cuttings. Softer, more herbaceous type woods, I usually go at a 10 times dilution, so 1 part of this to 10 parts of water, which is kind of about that right here. And you want to use as little of this as possible because this is expensive. Other more woody plant species or ones that take a little bit longer to develop roots, I'll go at a 5 times dilution, so 1 part for 5 parts of water. 1 part dip and grow per 5 parts of water. Another product that we've used in the past is Clonex, and Clonex is just a rooting hormone in a gel form. And so what we usually do is we'll pour a little bit out, and then when you make your cutting, just dip it into the gel and then put it in your either your plug trays or your pot. So after we did 10% dilution of bleach for all of our materials, let it sit for a bit and to activate and kill all of the plants, and then we kind of preset our plug trays so that they have moisture and compactability. And now we can make a cutting. So what you want to do is look at your plant, and when you make a cutting, you got to make sure that where the leaves come out, that's the nodes. Where the leaves come out is also where your roots are going to come out when you're making the cutting. So you want to make sure you have at least 1 or maybe 2 nodes under the media in the soil, and then a couple of leaves at the top so that the plant can grow. I typically make my cuttings between 4 to 6 inches, depending on the species. Can't give away all the secrets, man. Nah. So here's about our 6-inch cutting. At this point, I usually would have a sharper clippers, but cut off all of this, because what you don't want to do is the plant to transpire too much, because it doesn't have any roots yet, so it doesn't have the capacity to suck up as much water. So we reduce the surface area of photosynthesis. It also helps the plant not shock out as badly. And then here's your node. I like to make about a 1/4 inch from the bottom, from the node, I mean, is where I make the cut. And then put it in the dip and grow solution. Try not to leave it in there for more than 5 seconds. You take it out. Reason being is that there's, the plant's gonna take some up, but there's alcohol in here, so too long of a soak, you're gonna have alcohol go up in there and you're gonna get drunk plants. Nah, it'll dry out. It can dry out the plant. So then we'll just put it in. I'll make another cutting right around there. If you're really good, you can just kind of take the leaves off that way. You don't want to go too slow, because sometimes when you do that, it'll rip the outer bark out. And then make sure that we got good length, put it in there. And what I like to do is I'll fill out a whole row, and then I'll come back and then I'll pack it in, not super hard, but just kind of lightly, and go all the way down. Then I work on my second row and so on and so forth, and so your cuttings look like that. Also, when you do it in here, same difference, but in a 6-inch pot on a plant this big, we can probably fit about 10 cuttings of this into here. When you get to the tip, I didn't go over that part yet. So we get to the tip, and the tip of the plant it's got a lot of growth hormones in there that also aid in developing roots. So I try to leave that much about there. Some plants can actually tolerate having more leaves on there than others. Hibiscus generally aren't one of them. And but we're just reducing leaf surface area so that we can allow the plant to grow in on its own. And then also in situations like this where we have a community pot, rather than putting in all of the cuttings and then coming in and packing, I will put the cutting in and then pack it immediately. And the same thing, just start on the edges and kind of work your way over. So typically you can fit about 10 in here. But that's generally how we do it for most all native hibiscus. There's other plants. I'll show you how we do our pohinahina and stuff. 2 different ways, depending on how much space we have and how desperate we are for getting orders out. So I'll show you that right now. Let's go. So depending on how much material we have to do as far as cuttings, you know, we don't like to waste materials if they're available. So most of the time when we do pohinahina, we'll just fill up 4-inch pot trays, and then if you can imagine this stick right here without all of this new growth, this is all new growth. So we're taking stuff similar to like how we showed you with the red hibiscus, and we'll take the pohinahina cutting and we'll completely strip it of all of the leaves, so it's just the stick. And then we'll, same thing, make sure that there's a node on there, and we'll just stick the stick in the media, and we'll keep the media moist, and it'll usually start to send out shoots within a week and a half. And before you know it, this is about, I would say, maybe a month, maybe a little more than a month since we did these, and they're pretty well rooted already. And all of this is all new growth. And what happens is you actually get a bushier plant this way, and a more full looking plant in the long run. And then, but just like other ones, if we have too much plants, too much propagules or cuttings, and not enough space to do it all in this style, then we'll do pohinahina in the same method, strip the whole thing, and then just put them in these plug trays, and then when we need them, we already got them rooted, ready to go. This is our mist system going off, and this is our mist house that we root the cuttings in. So, so we just put the cuttings in here when they're done, and this system goes off for about 5 seconds every 7 minutes, about, on average. It depends. It's on a solar sensor. But if you just so happen to not happen to have a solar sensing multi duration setup timer, you can also get the same achievement of rooting your cuttings with a little, like in the past I've used Slurpee cups with the dome hood, and then I'll put that same media inside the Slurpee cup, cover up with the dome hood, put less cuttings in there obviously, and then as long as the media is a little bit moist, you don't want it oversaturated, you don't want water to collect in there, but every day just kind of through the puka at the top, just a couple mists, as many times as you can throughout the day. Poke a couple of small holes on the bottom, and then but if you do it like maybe 4 times a day, that's plenty. I would say at least try to get in there twice a day, and then like I said, depending on the species, like pohinahina will root out really quick. You don't even need to have the dome cap on there, but hibiscus should start to show roots in about 2 weeks. Real simple. And yeah, we have a lot of different species that we attempt different propagation methods. For us, if it's a super rare plant and we want to double it up, we'll try to take cuttings off of it, but another method is air layering. But the thing with air layering is that there's a lot of steps in the process of making an air layer that you can kill that branch, whatever that you're doing, if you're not like super pro. So it's and then also so you make an air layer that's about this big off of one plant. Yeah, you'll get one plant, but with cuttings, you can get maybe 6-7 plants off of that one, if done properly. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. Our mist house is a little bit empty because we just went through a mass potting up of plants, but we're going to be filling this up this week. But yeah, that's kind of cuttings 101. And then so like depending on the species, plants can be ready from 2 weeks to 6 months sometimes. And but once they're ready, I can show you what we do to pot them up. So we're shifting over to a different species. This is Iliae Plumbago Zelenicus. Just because they got some nice roots developing on this one. But once, just like the hibiscus, once the plant develop roots, you start to see them coming out the bottom. It should be like a commercial for Dip and Grow. And once they're ready, then I'll get the trays together with media. And our media that we use is very similar to our cuttings media. We like a lot of drainage, especially in these younger stages. So it's almost the same, except we do 1-to-1 perlite and coconut, but then we also add in 1 part of cinder for drainage. And when we're potting them up, I like to take it out of the basket, and then it's the key part in taking the plugs out, the rooted cuttings out, is to squeeze the bottom. So you want to squeeze it to kind of loosen it. What you don't want to do is just pull out the plant, because then you can strip the root hairs off of the roots, and that'll ultimately kill your cutting that you've already invested so much time and effort into putting in. And when you planting it, I usually fill these guys up all the way up, and then make a hole similar to the size of the root ball, place it in said hole, and pack from the outside in. So you don't have to press it down too hard, and then you can get into a good rhythm. Make a hole, outside in, outside in, and then fill up the whole tray. Give it one last watering, and then go and put them out on the outside tables and let them fill out this pot. Let the roots fill out this pot. This particular species will be ready in like a week and a half, so before it's sellable. But yeah, thanks for joining me on how to do cuttings of native plants with Jenna and Rick at Hui Ku Maoli Ola.